Hi, everyone. Welcome to the 9th Annual Destiny City Film Festival. My name is Ambriehl. I am the Assistant Director of Marketing and Communications for the festival, and I am here with the filmmakers and cast of the film Landlocked. I will let everyone introduce themselves and talk about their role on the film, and I guess we can get started with Tim.
My name is Tim Hall. I'm the director and co-writer of the film Landlocked. And we have our two lead actors here with us.
Delia, you want to go ahead?
Dustin is shy, so I'll go next. Yeah, my name is Delia Kropp, and I play Brianna, which is that character is the biological father of Dustin's character.
Yeah, and I'm Dustin. I play Nick, the son.
So pretty standard intro question is, how did this project come to be? How'd you all get involved?
Yeah, so Dustin and I had made a film previously that played at the Atlanta Film Festival in 2017, and we won the Georgia Film Award with that movie. And with that award came a generous gift certificate to a camera and equipment rental house that we had 2 years to use. So it was kind of like the clock was ticking all of a sudden, and it was. I think after our previous movie, I knew I wanted to tell I wanted to tell a story about a parent and child relationship. And I think with everything kind of that was going on in the world and still in various ways, I just felt like I wanted to tell this story of this broken relationship and this moment and small miracle of these two people and this fractured relationship sort of taking its first step towards existing again. And we sort of came up with this story of Dustin's character. I think dealing with some of my thoughts, being raised in a Southern Baptist church, and I think a lot of frustrations with the church's, I think, just utter failure of how they've just completely failed to embrace the LGBTQ community. So kind of hatching the story of this character re-engaging with Brianna, his estranged transgender parent. And so we kind of found a story that we liked, and then it was the terrifying thing of, well, what if I can't find someone to play this role? And I was fortunate enough to I read about Delia in an article, and I reached out through her website and was nervous I would just never get a response or hear anything, because she seems pretty perfect from what I was thinking. And but I heard back and sent her our previous film and this script, and we had a really nice phone call and just sort of talking about, what this movie was and what we were wanting to do, and the very humble means in which we were probably going to be making it. And she was crazy enough to jump on board with us. So yeah, kind of broadly, that's sort of how it all began.
And going off that note, Delia, I read that this was your debut feature film. You've done a lot of stage work prior, but how is this on a feature film? How is this process different, and how do you kind of just approach it?
Yeah, this is my first large role in a feature film, definitely. Well, it was remarkably similar, actually. In lieu of rehearsals, because of course, small indie film, we really didn't have time for that on set. We had, in some cases, months of conversation over the telephone and so forth. I actually came into the project, well, maybe what would you say, Tim? Like maybe 1 or 2 drafts before the end.
Yeah.
I had very little, in terms of recommendations for it, but it did give me time, to sort of hear what was on Tim's mind and learn more about the character. On set, most of the scenes I'd say we did between about 1 and 3 takes on, and then moved on because of time considerations. But you do that in a tech rehearsal and a play too. The main thing in terms of the arc of the character, knowing where you are in any given scene, and in terms of the whole story and the character development, and you learn that in theater too. It isn't you've got that all mapped out through your weeks of rehearsals and your discussion with the director. And I think for the most part, Jim and I were on the same page without really even having to say very much. So that would be my process. Very similar, a little different.
And you mentioned that you came in a few drafts before the final one. So Tim, I'm kind of curious, did the story evolve as you were writing it? And if so, how?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's so my co-writer and I are both cisgender white men, and so you can do your best like writing a character, and no matter what the character is, if it's a mother, or anybody, a life experience that I haven't had, you want to bring somebody into the fold that can hopefully flesh it out and work with you, and kind of like Delia was alluding to, when you're making a film on the scale in which we did, we don't really have time to get to a location and sort of find the scene or break everything down right then. So it was really important in the months leading up to it to, whether it's, Delia and I going through the script and talking about the character and making sure things seemed authentic and truthful, or, with the three of us just talking about, because it's a very like understated, quiet film and a lot's happened in the past, and making sure that we were, all on board or all understood kind of what the past is, because we allude in different little parts. There's kind of tips of the iceberg throughout the movie, but making sure we were all on the same page of kind of what is that iceberg we're alluding to. We all sort of understand the collective past that these people have gone through. So, yes, I mean, the months leading up to it and just sort of, were very important. And that's the fun thing about working with actors like Dustin and Delia. And I've been working with Dustin for a very long time, and he doesn't let you skate by on anything. So it's sort of like, and that's the fun part of really thinking everything through, and just bringing people in that are gonna, make every choice stronger and make the film better. But yeah.
And Dustin, question for you: how did you approach the character of Nick, and what did you feel was important to bring to him?
Oh, wow. Good question. How did I approach the character?
With a lot of questions.
I guess similar to like anything else, just, looking at like the given circumstances of the character and the situation and seeing what it would be like to be there. I mean, like you said, Keller High School, I, grew up Fort Worth, Texas area and stuff. So I know what it would be like to have a transgender parent, especially, 15, 20 years ago. It would be very difficult, even if you're an incredibly progressive person, So I think just being able to understand how society works and how difficult that is, and how you're trying especially as a teenager, fit into the world, and always worried about judgment and things like that, and how that can stick with you for the rest of your life until you slowly mature and grow out of those early shames, whatever they may be. Everybody has a different thing in their life, right? And so, yeah, it helped me to approach. It's like, also like, I'm gay, and so I feel like I could understand a lot of I feel like I've observed a lot of people who are straight dealing with gay people, and so even though as a gay person I don't know really anything about the transgender experience, I could like put a lot of those things into it, where I'm like, oh, but I know how straight friends had to deal with their gay friends, especially when it was like a newer thing. So I was able to like kind of apply those things to it. I don't know, it's a really broad answer, but yeah.
And Delia, same question to you. How did you approach the character of Brianna, and what did you feel was important to bring to Brianna's character?
Right, yeah. Quite honestly, in most respects, the character is very similar to me. I also transitioned later in life. No family, so I didn't have to deal with that. But many of my transgender friends have. And it usually entails a great deal of conflict, divorce, and situations like with Brianna and Nick, where, the children are in some cases actually, prevented from seeing the transgender parent. So it's tragic for all the parties concerned. So I had some indirect experience of that. But, she's a professional, she's fairly bright, and is working in a credit union when we, start the story here, simply because she's found a life ecology, that involves keeping a slightly lower profile. She's working in public, but not as a doctor, her former profession, and has a found family, where she is, of other trans and LGBT people. And I know what that's like to also, had a lot of support locally. Here in Chicago, there is a wonderful community here. Everything from medical transition to social to just about anything, for resources and just friendship. So it wasn't a huge step. Probably the biggest things are Brianna's fairly religious, quite religious, and the family situation there, of which I have no direct experience. So.
And you mentioned Brianna being religious. I thought that was a really unique touch, considering just the location and the character. So I'm kind of curious, from a writing standpoint, Tim, why did you feel like that was important to include? And it's also in the film pretty subtle. So just how'd you approach making Brianna's character religious, and why did you make that decision?
I'm a Christian. I don't. I say that with a lot of frustration and with a lot of mainstream Christianity. But I think and there are. I think a lot of this came out of, I think, a lot of immense frustration and anger. I think at some of the churches and environments I grew up around, and even that this mindset that pursuing a lifestyle that may be unfamiliar to some is somehow a rejection of God, and I think is nonsense. And there, I wanted to give representation to that, which does exist, and I was interested in this character, that she's gone on this journey and it's brought her closer to God. It was just something that I feel like I haven't seen represented much in Israel. I just think a lot of people would come into it expecting the opposite, and just want to sort of make a choice there that I feel like I hadn't seen.
Yeah, I felt like it played on opposites there, because that confused me when I first started reading it. Well, when we were talking about it over and over, I just thought it was a really cool idea, just because it's like
one of the many touches. One of the touches in this film, where you kind of do upend a lot of the stereotypes, surrounding transgender people, and in a sense normalizes them. I mean, what is there more down to earth, and normal, in a relationship with a child, and the parents not only go to church, but are asking if the child does. You going to church there like she does. And concerned with the child's spiritual life. And I'm again, like everybody else, I'm very glad that Tim, gave her faith. For one thing, it's community. In fact, in our backstory to this, and slightly in the story, you pick that up too. That there are members of her church, trans and otherwise, that have been a support to Brianna. And that does happen, just like everybody else. So.
Yeah, it upends the stereotypes on both ends, right? Because you normally don't think of the transgender character is going to be the one pushing faith, but you also would expect, the Southern Christian or the Southern married dude who has a problem with the transgender parent to be, kind of bigoted and religious, and he's not. So it kind of upends stereotypes on both ends there, which I like.
Yeah, I also definitely like that about the film, and how it doesn't fall into a lot of tropes that, a lot of tropes for like trans characters and a lot of mainstream media. So I do kind of wonder, you've mentioned, Tim, as a cis person, did you have any hesitancy going into writing the story and directing it?
I mean, I think even like I'm currently working on something now, and it's like whenever I think in any kind of art, whenever you're doing something, you're trying to like, I want to gain a deeper understanding of what it is to be human or different walks of life. And it's sort of I mean, there's definitely fear of I was nervous to show the script to Delia, hoping it doesn't seem like, oh, this is like you're exploiting something, or you're not getting it across in an authentic manner. But it felt like a worthwhile thing to really go after and try and craft this story. And that was the whole the thing about finding somebody who had lived this life and gone on this journey to come along with us and just bring a deeper level of truth and honesty to it. But yeah, it's definitely because I mean, even in these situations, having the film screen now, it's no, this isn't it's not something I've personally walked in my life, but I think I think just trying to in any situation push yourself as a storyteller and try and hopefully give voice to stories and characters and people that are not just exactly like you, and finding the right people to come and tell those stories, and hopefully, I mean, that's the whole thing, is hopefully it just expand all of our understandings of the human condition, and put something truthful and honest and vulnerable out there, if any of that made sense.
Yes, it did. Thank you so much. And another question, you kind of touched on this. I mean, we talked about being Southern, since I'm from Texas, a little bit before the conversation. And I know the film had its world premiere at Atlanta Film Festival, and I believe it was shot in Georgia, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I'm just curious, again, you touched on this a little bit with the religious question, but how much of an influence did the South have on this story and your crafting of it?
I mean, I live, right outside of Atlanta, and I'm from Georgia, and I think I've become obsessed with telling stories of kind of Southern life, or in ways that I don't feel like I've seen it. We don't, I guess if you've never been to the South, it's like, I want to sort of dispel any thought that we're all sitting on creaky front porches, drinking tea out of mason jars, down dusty roads. It's like the South is a beautiful, but complicated and kind of haunted place. And it's sort of like even trying to, even as for myself, trying to say like I'm a white Southern Christian man, it's like I feel like just saying that can communicate a lot, and a lot that I don't want it to communicate. So it's it's a complicated place, and I think it's it's a deeply religious corner of the country, and at the same time you look at the history of obviously of the South, and just these things, these these paradoxes that just don't really make sense. It's that whole thing too of, if you say you base your life on this concept of love towards all and compassion and everything, but somehow that gets twisted into excluding people or trying to tell people that they're outside of the realm of God's love, that just doesn't quite make sense. So I don't know. I think even now there's so much stuff being shot in Georgia, so much filming here, but I still feel like I don't see stories of the South in a complex, real way very often. So I think that's sort of what with this film, what I was hoping to do is tell this story of a parent and child who both feel like they were the ones that were abandoned, and all the while it's this slow thaw, but Nick spends the whole film feeling like he was the one that was wronged. And, I think hopefully over this journey comes to a different viewpoint, and is able to kind of reassess and I don't know. It's a dangerous thing. We can do some terrible things when we think that we're in the right. But yeah, so no idea how to conclude that. But yeah, I think I'm very passionate about telling stories of, I think, the complexity of life in the South, and I think the South is particularly fascinating right now, and so many, I mean, politically in so many ways, where it's like it is at a real, I feel like, teetering point. And yeah, I think just hopefully telling this small story of compassion and change, hopefully make a difference in somebody's life.
And jumping off of that, you just kind of answered this question, but Delia and Dustin, what do you hope people take away from this story?
I'll let you take that first, Delia.
Well, again, I'll come back to the word normalize, that we exist in the same way that cisgender people do for the most part. As you mentioned, there are certain tropes that are, a frequent part of transgender stories, and lovely stories, wonderfully talented actors in them, but we don't all live in nightclubs, strip clubs, we don't all live in 1980s New York. And those marginalized areas, those areas on the fringe of society, are largely where we've been appropriated to us, where we've been designated to live in the movieverse. And there are all kinds of reasons why. There's the voyeuristic thing, not as if we weren't unusual enough. They have to put us also in a milieu that is also allows, middle class people to take a little peek behind the curtain, I guess. But that is so atypical of us. I mean, we have kids, we have jobs, we are loved. We go to work, for 9 hours a day. And we suffer a lot of the same heartbreak that other people do. Maybe some of it was initiated, as in this story, because of, the gender situation of the father. But at this point in the story, that's not it. They've been separated for 23 years. Both of them feel a void. That's human. That's nothing to do with false eyelashes and transition surgeries and all this exotic stuff that we're normally pigeonholed into. In fact, the normality of the story, the everydayness of the story is really what drew me to the script, and to Tim, and Tim's very humane treatment of Brianna and the situation. So that's what I hope people take away. We're just people, just like you.
Yeah, and I would say, on top of that too, just coming at things from my character's perspective, basically, is that I hope that people can take away, like, on both sides, that it takes time to have understanding and to have compassion and to move forward, and that to just label people immediately bigots because they're not jumping up for joy or throwing a parade for somebody that, if the movie takes time, and that there's some people who may be resistant, but if you give them time, they will come around. And that's the only way that we can really move forward as a society, and is to move towards empathy and understanding.
Yeah, I wanted to add, and then piggyback on what Dustin just said. He's absolutely right. Too many times people from the progressive side of things, we demand things. And in some cases, those demands are absolutely necessary. I think in the case of gender identity, in terms of the personal relationship, in terms of getting people to get over the usual binary of things, it takes some time, and it takes some love, and it takes some patience. And I'm not talking about it in terms of laws and legislation and rights. Absolutely not. You know, if you're a citizen, you get and deserve those rights. But I know that when I come into the room, I am probably the subject of everybody's attention to some degree, you know, because I'm different. And, you know, the one thing I do, if it's a room full of strangers or people I don't know, is, you know, is just make a few jokes, you know, and maybe even try to bring up my gender situation in maybe a humorous or a light way. You know, something about what I'm wearing or just something. That's my way, a way of breaking the ice, so that people look at me less as an identity issue and look at me more as a human being. So yeah, big props to what Dustin just said there. Yeah.
And
Yeah,
go ahead. Go ahead.
Sorry.
No, go ahead, Dustin.
No, okay. I was just gonna say, like, it's interesting you saying that about the jokes and stuff like that, because I think about that as far as slow evolution of things, like me in high school being a closet case, you know, certainly not because it's very dangerous to be gay, and then you know, going to college, it's like, oh, the way I can deal with it is by preemptively making the jokes and being funny, you know, and people going along with that, and then now, at least for me, it's not a big deal. Everybody's like, oh yeah, that's a lifestyle, you know, that's how people are. But I've seen it go from like, that's evil to, ooh, that's gross, to, oh, that's hilarious, to, oh, you're just a person. You know what I mean? And so I think that Tim's movie, in being the slow road movie, you know, it kind of takes that time for this one character to get to a place of understanding, you know.
And I do always like to ask, and any of you can answer this, is there anything that I didn't ask about that you'd like to share about the film, whether it be your experience or just a cool anecdote, anything really?
I'm trying to remember. It was so long ago now, because the post got delayed in quarantine.
Today it was 3 years that we that I went home, that we closed shooting today.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Facebook told me so. I would just like to add one thing, pursuant to what Tim and y'all have been saying about the South. Jim flew me down a few months before we began film, and it was my first time in Atlanta. Not my first time in the South. I'd been to Tennessee, I'd been to Arizona, does that count? And many trips to Florida. But every part of this country has got its own unique feel. And quite honestly, I enjoyed myself in Atlanta for that first weekend. That said, I was still a little apprehensive because we would be shooting in areas outside downtown Atlanta, where, you know, everybody's pretty nicely behaved, and I didn't know, you know, what I might encounter. I have a lot of friends that live in the South, a lot of friends that live in Texas, particularly, and it's sometimes life is kind of rough for them. But you know, I was never extended anything but the utmost courtesy and compassion, and it was a real joy to be filming in Georgia, in every way. I just want to go back when it's warmer next time. We had some hot days on the beach, but mostly it was pretty cold.
So cold.
January 2019 when we filmed, so thankfully we shot before the pandemic.
Oh yeah, if you want anecdotes, we didn't have what is it, a budget for the movie, so we had some interesting experiences, especially like with the weather and like the driving scenes, you know, because we're literally like on real roads with like cameras strapped to the car, and it's like starting to rain, and it was a lot.
Yeah,
it was a lot going on.
We shot the film in about 15 days, and 12 of those were up here, kind of in the Atlanta suburbs or in Atlanta, and then the last 3 were down on St. Simon's Island and Jekyll Islands on the coast. So it was we were kind of it was an intense 3 weeks. We were getting a lot done in a very little amount of time. So, but it's a thrill.
Yeah, like
honor to have the movie at this festival and finally have it seen. I think especially after have festivals and everything, it's just it's nice to even having it streaming on this festival and others, hopefully even reaching a even wider audience. So just to get the movie seen is a real is a wonderful payoff.
And we're very honored to have your film and be screening it. So thank you for sharing it with us. I guess the last question I want to end on is for all of you, any upcoming collaborations, projects, whether it be film, Delia, maybe stage projects, anything you'd like to share?
I'm we're just finishing the some of the smaller scenes on a it's not so much a podcast as an audio drama, sort of like a limited series, but for audio, that takes place up about 80 years from now in the Chicago area. So it's science fiction, but with a lot of emphasis on how our society has changed. Yeah, there are other COVID outbreaks, according to this scenario, and some technology that goes downhill, and some that continues to expand. And my character is transgender in this as well, and it's really cool. And it's called Lake Song. And I have no idea when it will be coming out. But
Well, let us know, and we will follow up. And then Tim, Dustin, any upcoming projects?
Yeah, I'm writing.
I'm just waiting on Tim to write something.
I'm writing a movie right now. We're hoping to maybe start shooting in the fall. So it kind of follows 3 women at 3 different ages, both kind of going through moments of profound loss and whatnot. And so hoping to start kind of rolling on that towards the end of the year. So
which one is Dustin playing?
Well, he's not. He won't be playing one of the women, I promise.
Oh, come on. You can do it.
Well, Tim, Delia, Dustin, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for sharing Landlocked again. To everyone watching this, thank you for watching. Share the news about Landlocked with your friends. And all of you stay in touch about your future projects. We'd love to share news about those. And once again, just thank you in general. It's been a good conversation.
Thanks, Ambriehl.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Cool.